Hello friends, welcome to our Thursday paint along. We are painting the Cosmo today, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm in the right place and all of the things. We have been testing different microphones this morning, and hopes of getting better audio. I did a live yesterday morning and my audio was not so great. I found out you could barely hear me, and then today it's just super staticky, so I hope that it comes through okay on your end. Alright, well, I've got my comments up. It looks like I'm in the right place. Let's see, one more time. Audio. Sounds okay on my phone. Okay, so we are painting the Cosmo today. This is the third flower painting that we've done, kind of in a series with that same composition. If you remember, we did the sunflower first. Let me find that. There it is. So we've got the sunflower was our first one in this series. We did the hyannis, I believe is how you say it, second. So this was last week's painting, and today then we are going to do the Cosmo. And after that, then I'm going to challenge you to create a bouquet of the three flowers together. That will be the challenge for the group. Okay, I am going to switch this over to the overhead so we can get started painting. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let me see what we're doing here. Okay. So if you're able to join, say hi. If you're painting along, let me know. If you plan to paint later, comment later. And let me know where you're watching from. So let me talk about the paints, I guess. Let's start there. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I am using a black and a white. We've got it's not a holly branch, that's the wrong green. I was using Kelly green. I have the green lagoon. And we are using bright magenta for the flower. And then we're also using a little bit of the burnt umber to darken up some colors, and then the King's Gold for the center. So very similar color scheme, and we just switched one out with the pink there. Alright, so let's get some of our colors out for our background, which is the Green Lagoon and the Kelly Green. And I'm going to water these down and create a wash. So previously I was using the water in my jar, and I'd get my brush a little bit wet, and then I'd pull some of that water out and water my color here. Another way that you can create a fun wash is using a spray bottle. And you can just spray a little bit of water on your surface, and then as you pull your paint out there, it creates that really fun wash as well. So another way to water down your paints. I love this background technique. It just gives it a very fun, loose background and is different every single time you do it. You can try your hardest to get the colors the same way, the location of where you put the colors, but it's going to be unique every single time, and I love that about this background. All depending on how much water you're using, how much color. And as you go, you can just keep adding more paint to that already wet surface if you want it to be a little bit darker. And if it gets to be a little too dark, you can use a paper towel or a wet one and kind of dab away some of that pigment and lighten it up. It won't, as it starts to dry, it will be harder to do that. So if you are trying to pick up color, you do want to do it while it's still wet. Because once it's dry, it's permanent. So unless you go over it, right? All right, so I'm going to blow dry this real quick. Okay, so I have decided to just start including the tracers in the guides for the paintings that we do if you choose to use them. We were going through the process of creating a special link on the website, and then you would log into our library on the website, and it just was a bunch of extra work. So we simplified it. We can add them right in this group. You're already here. It's right there in the guides. So look for the guides labeled tracer, and we will start just adding the tracers in that as a PDF form in the size of a 9x11, which is kind of a standard mixed media pad. And you can take that PDF and scale it up or scale it down however you want to do it. But that's going to be the new format moving forward. The website is not going away, so if you are a member of that library on our website, you can still go back and access old tracers and things like that from there. So we've been doing some different things with our website, so trying to just figure out what the best method is, and doesn't require a lot of website work on our end, because that's the not so fun part about business. So I'm just going to sketch my Cosmo out here. It might be a little bit different than what we're seeing, but it'll be similar. See if I can make that a little darker. So I've placed my line across here where I want my horizon or tabletop to be, and then I just put the cylinder vase in, which is essentially just a rectangle. At the bottom it's got a small little curve, and then at the top it's got a really narrow oval. Okay, and then I pulled my stem out to where I want my flower to be. I'm going to put a little oval right at the top of my stem there, and then I'm just going to create some messy petals here because the Cosmo petals are not perfect, and we'll throw those in there, and then I'm just going to pull one stem out here where that little bud is going to be, and all of the other little bits of greenery will go in as we paint. Alright, so I'm going to get some white out. And I did forget a color. I am using a gray for the tabletop, the country gray. Let me grab that and drop it in my paint. So I have the country gray that I'm using along the bottom here. If you didn't have this, you could definitely just use the black and white and mix your own gray, which I typically like to do. But I've discovered this gray, it's kind of a grayish, and it has some really nice tones to it, so I don't mind using it. Alright, so we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. I'm going to grab that gray and fill in my table here, or my surface, whatever it may be. Okay, and then I'm going to grab some of that gray off to the side here and add a little bit of black to it and darken it up for just some different texture on the tabletop, and mostly for this back side where I want my shadow to be. So I'm just going to line my brush up. I'm using a large flat. I'm going to line it up with my vase and just kind of drag that dark gray out. So we can start to see some of that darkness happen there. I'm going to get it a little bit more darker. So we do want to see that shadow. There we go. Alright, so then we're going to go the other way with it. We'll grab some of that gray and add a little bit of white to it. Oops. And we'll go the other way. We're going to add some light to the other side. It's very streaky, very bold brush strokes. And there we go, that's our, now we're going to move right into the white and paint our vase. I'm still just using the large flat for this. This is a great brush for filling in larger areas that don't require a ton of detail. Okay, and that's going to probably require a second coat. White is a little translucent, so I'm still seeing some of the green kind of poking through, but we'll let this rest and then we'll come back to it. So at this point now I'm going to switch to a medium round, and I'm going to grab my green. I'm going to get a little bit of the burnt umber out. I love mixing burnt umber with my green to darken it up a little bit for some darker areas. So I'm going to start by mixing a little green and a little burnt umber to put my stem in. And we will also use it to put that stem in for the bud. And then from there, I'm just going to go right back into that Kelly green, and with just a really light pressure, I'm going to put little leaves in. And so the leaves of a Cosmo are more like just little baby stems all touched, connected. So we're just bringing some lines off that main stem and then branching off from that and just adding little short lines from all over, trying to vary the direction of them. It's kind of like is it celery that looks like this? Celery stems or celery, the tops of celery? No, I don't know if that's right. And then I'll pull one out here. So just really light pressure. You can always switch to a smaller brush if you want to. If you have difficulties with this medium brush getting a kind of thin line, it does take a little bit of practice. And knowing how much pressure you should be applying and all of that. So feel free to switch to a liner brush if that makes it easier. Okay. Alright, so let's get our flower in. We've got the King's Gold for the center and then the bright magenta for the flower. So if you're catching this on replay, comment replay. And if you've painted the other flowers, I would love to hear about it, and would love to see your work. So don't forget to share what you're doing, and don't stress about having never painted or how good you think you're painting it. You need to take courage and post and let us be the judge of that. And know that this is a safe environment where there's only kindness and encouragement in this group. And when we have that courage to share our work and gain that encouragement and feedback, it just helps us to have the drive to create more work. Alright, so I've got my base coat in using that bright magenta. I'm going to add a little bit of some shadow to that, so I'm going to grab a little of that magenta off to the side. I'm going to grab some of that burnt umber, and we're going to darken that magenta up. So I'm going to take that magenta and I'm going to come down the center of my petals here and kind of create a crease line. And I think I need it a little darker. And think about creating your crease line in an arc, not just a straight line coming out. If I come to the if I'm creating a crease for this petal here, I start at the center, and what I'm going to do is just bring in a dark brush stroke like this, and I'm going to arc it. That's going to give us that illusion that that petal is kind of folding back on itself. If I go straight out, it just makes my petal look flat. So on this one up here, I'm kind of arcing it that way. Again, I want it to, and maybe I put a second one in there, to look like my petals are turned out. This one, I'm arcing that crease line down, and then this one I will go from center kind of down to the right there. And I think I just need it to be even a little darker. I'm having a hard time seeing that. So we're going to grab a little more burnt umber. There we go. Okay. And then from there, on this one, I'm going to take that dark burnt umber, or darker magenta, and just swoosh it along the bottom of this petal here. And then this one, I will do this side of the petal, just bringing some of that darkness in there. And we're kind of just thinking about where that petal might be where the light is and how that petal is folded and where it might be in that shadow versus the light. So this one is considered the lowest part of the flower. It could be shadowed completely by this petal. The flower is kind of turning up. This is where my light source is. And so most of this petal down here is going to be kind of that darker magenta. Okay. Then we're going to take some of that burnt magenta and we'll go right into just that, or not burnt magenta, sorry, the bright magenta, and come in and just start blending some of that dark a little bit so there's no harsh lines. Putting a second coat on the areas that don't have the shadow brush strokes. Okay, we're starting to see those colors pop a little more. And now we're going to grab some white and lighten up this magenta. And I don't want it that light. There we go. And now we've got our shadow on the bottom here, so let's add a little bit of lightness to the tops here, maybe on the top of that crease. On the outer edge of the petal here and this top piece. And then maybe just the light is just catching a small portion of this bottom petal right there, so we'll lighten that up. Okay, and then we're just going to go straight into the white. We've got a little bit of white on our brush. We haven't washed it yet. We still got all of that magenta on there. And we're going to add some just streaks of white to really bring out an area on that petal that is hitting the sun or the light source just perfect. Okay, and maybe right there. All right. There is our petals. Oh, I forgot my little bud off to the side here, so let's go grab some of that magenta. And this is just kind of a half circle and then a messy top there. We can add some dark underneath if we want, and then a little bit of light on top. Just kind of a little blob of paint, really. Okay, we're ready for the center. I'm going to use that King's Gold for the center. And when you're painting flowers and or drawing or coloring marker, whatever you're using, you always want to try and keep the flower from always facing forward. So I like to imagine my flowers kind of pointing towards my light source, or especially if they're in a bouquet, I like to make them look like they're kind of pointed down. And to do that, to make it look like your flower is pointing away from you in some direction or not, and not just right flat looking at you, is to make that center an oval, and that's going to give that look that it's pointing away. Alright, so I'm going to grab some of this yellow, a little bit of that burnt umber, and a little bit more. I'm going to create a dark area right here, kind of where it's kind of folded into those petals. I'm just dabbing that dark in there. We can start to see that shadow happening. Okay, and then we're going to go the other way with it. We're going to use that yellow, grab a little bit of white. We're going to lighten it up, and we're going to dab that lighter color along the top of that oval. And that's going to help us get that look that this center is kind of bulging out. Okay. Then we're going to go right into that burnt umber. I haven't washed my brush, and I'm just going to dab a few dots of that dark brown in here to help show those little, I should find out what that word is. Are they feelers inside the center of the flower? I don't think that's what they're called. The little dots that happen inside the center of the flower. And I'm only adding those to the bottom part of that flower. All right, that is the Cosmo flower. So let's come back to this little bud here. Typically, it has little leaves that wrap around the bud until it's ready to bloom. So let's just add some little short brush strokes right at the base. So we're going to start here and just move out. And do 2 or 3. And it's almost like we're creating those little fingers that are holding on to that bud. All right, so I want to add some lightness to my leaves. And I'm going to use the green and yellow mixed together to get me a light green, something super bright and springy. And then using just the tip and light pressure, I'm going to go over some of these little sprigs of leaves. I guess you'd call them leaves. They don't. They're more just like sprigs or branches almost. They look like little branches. So we can add some brightness into those, and then you can even add a little bit of white to this spring color here we've got, and drag a little bit of white through some of those areas. It just helps give those little pieces, that greenery, some dimension to have to have all 3 colors, the dark, the light, and then the original Kelly green. Okay, let's go back and add our second coat to our vase here. I'm going to go back to my large flat. I'm going to grab the white. And there we've got our second coat. That large flat brush is so handy for quickly getting those large areas. Alright, so I'm going to find my liner brush now. And I'm going to grab some of the white, a little bit of that black, and make a light gray. And at the top of the vase, this should really be an oval. It's kind of rounded up right now. And so at the bottom of the oval is the edge of this side of the vase. The top of the oval and everything inside is actually, we're seeing that back of the vase inside. And so we want that to be gray. Okay, and then I'm going to bring some gray streaks down the side and around the bottom here where we'd have this part be more in the shadow because our light source is coming in here. It's hitting this side, and so we just want to add a little bit of gray on the side there. And I've also took it around the bottom here and a little bit up the top there, not much. Okay, so the other thing that you might be noticing here is it looks like our flower now is on the other side of our vase and not in the vase. And to fix that, we're just going to take a little bit of that green and pull that stem over the top to meet up with the bottom of our oval, which is the front of our vase. And now we've essentially put that back in the vase by doing that, just by adjusting those brush strokes there. Okay. All right. So then the next thing we can do is start adding the pattern to our vase, and you can do any pattern you want. I've kind of got this theme of some maybe handmade clay vases with some geometric design, so I've kept with that, and I'm just going to use the plus symbol here, and I'm doing 3 rows down. So I start on the left side here and I do 3 pluses, and then I'm going to go a little bit over, and in between these two put a plus sign. Coming straight down in between the next two, do a plus sign. So it's kind of offset, and then one here. So they're kind of coming at an angle as they go around the vase. And again, I'm just using my liner brush for this process. There we go. All right, I'm going to take that black that I've got, my liner, and start adding some defining lines to my vase. So a line along the top to define that opening. And we'll do a kind of a broken line on the edges here. Going down and around. Nothing solid or perfect, just some streaks of black. We'll add a little streak of black to the back here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of, let's see, let's grab some more of that darker gray. Let's darken up this shadow here. And I'm using my liner brush, which I shouldn't be, but that's all right. It's just a small little area. Just get a little bit of some darker shadow happening down there for a little more contrast. Alright, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of this magenta. I love adding the colors of the flowers kind of into the tabletop or my surface, whatever it's sitting on. I think it just adds, kind of ties it all together. There could be a reflection from those flowers up here, kind of reflecting down. And so you can add as much or little as you want for that part. You can even add a little bit of green in the vase to add some fun pops of color in there. Again, more of like a reflection of color from the surrounding areas. And that's it. That is our Cosmo. So don't forget to sign your work. I highly encourage you to date your work so that you can see your progress as you are painting. Because sometimes when we're in a painting, we feel like it's terrible, and then when we compare it to something we did a while ago, we are able to see that we are making progress. And that's always a fun thing to do. So I'm going to bring it up here and show you the finished product a little bit closer here. So So just a fun, quick little painting of one Cosmo and a little bud. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, paint along, and look forward to seeing your guys's versions of this. So if you paint along, make sure to post it in the comments and let us encourage you. No matter where you're at in your painting journey. All right, guys, I thank you for watching. Look forward to next week. We are going to be doing something a little bit different. It won't be flowers, probably completely different. We're done with this type of series or this composition, and so we'll move on to something else. So look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of the week.